Well, I have been looking forward to this video and dreading it as well. Excited because I've got some astounding things to tell you. Dreading it because if I don't get you to understand, then you're going to miss an opportunity to hear truth. Not my truth, not something that I've come up with, an interesting take on the book of Revelation, and I want you to consider it. That would be totally different. I'm giving you the truth, his truth. Because 1 week ago today at 4 a.m., that would be Wednesday, April 14th, I received an answer to a prayer that I had been making for the previous 3 to 4 months. I had run into a problem in the book of Revelation, and I could not see a solution to it. And when I finally got to the end of myself and finally got to the place where I said, I can't get it. Now, I had been praying for help, but when you get to that place where you realize, I'm not going to get it, I told him, I don't have the intellectual firepower to figure this out. If you don't want to give it to me and that's your will, then let me at least hear it someday from somebody you did give it to, because I'd love to hear what the answer to this problem is. And at that point, it started coming. And over the next 2 hours, I not only got the solution to that problem, he gave me a fresh understanding of the structure of the book of Revelation. And it's not what I thought, and it's probably not what you thought. Now, it's not going to change everything. Here's some good news. I'm not going to touch the rapture, leave it exactly where you want to leave it. I'm not going to change the length of the tribulation, let's call it that. Leave it anyway, 7 years, 14 years, whatever you want to do with it. I am going to change, though, the timeline that we have taught and the overall structure, how the book of Revelation was written. And you're going to see it in a fresh light. And if you reject it, you reject it. I feel sorry for you. I don't mean that in a mean-spirited way. I literally feel sorry for you because you're missing an opportunity to receive truth, his truth. If this were my truth, I'd tell you, take it with a grain of salt. I've done that in the past. And so you'll know that I'm not trying to milk this thing for more views. I've taken down all my other prophecy videos. I left the original video that didn't have anything to do with biblical prophecy up. And it's not that I no longer think those videos have some value, but they're incomplete because they didn't have the understanding that I now have of the structure of the book of Revelation and the correct timeline. Why did we see the Revelation 12 sign? We have not spent enough time on that. Because honestly, if I went back to 2015 in time, before you had ever heard of Scotty Clark or Stellarium software, or that an unusual astronomical alignment was going to take place on September 23rd, 2017, before you knew any of that, I go back to 2015 and I ask you, do you think we'll be here to see the Revelation 12 sign? All of you, including me, would have said, well, no. We're not going to see something in chapter 12. We're gone back here. Now, we may disagree exactly where gone back here is, but it was certainly before chapter 12, but yet it showed up. And we haven't discussed that fully enough. That wasn't my problem. This is going to be a bonus solution for you, by the way. There is a reason why we saw the Revelation 12 sign. And the people who doubt it, they doubt it because they look at where it was, the 12th chapter, and they go, look at all of that's in the 7th seal. Look at all of the events previous to the Revelation 12 sign. Of course, that wasn't the Revelation 12 sign. They can't get their head around it. You and I can, because we recognize, well, I may not have expected it, but there it is. There it is. And so one of our answers is, well, the events of the book of Revelation are nonlinear. Well, that's a dangerous statement because you just opened the door to chaos. The other way you could explain it would be to say, well, certain events, certain chapters are interlude events or parenthesis events and chapters. The book of Revelation has a general timeline, But every now and then there'll be a stop in the timeline and an interlude, a little insert that doesn't have anything to do with the timeline. It could be an event that'll be ahead, in the future, or in the past. And that's what happened with the Revelation 12 sign. No, it is not. No, it is not. That is not the answer. I'll give you the answer at the end. I'm not trying to get you to stay onto the video, but I can't give you the answer now until you understand what the correct structure and the correct timeline of the book of Revelation is. It began with a problem. I want to lay out the problem I have, so I'm going to walk you through it. The problem I had rested with seal 6 and seal 7. People do not give seal 6 enough fear and trembling. They don't recognize its mammoth size and event, because there are 15 more chapters of bad stuff coming. So we kind of scan over and go, okay, it sounds like a bad event. Now let's move on to the 7th seal. The 6th seal is the day of the Lord. That's not headline news. We should all know that by now. That's a well-known, stated fact by many theologians, including myself, for years. It declares it in the body of the text of seal 6. Let's take a quick look at it. I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake. And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. That's the first indication that we have just walked into the day of the Lord. And the stars of heaven fell to earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up. I don't even know what that means. Some translations say the sky vanished, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, everybody, folks, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains. Why? Because every man-made structure is probably rubble right now. And said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? This is the day of the Lord. This is the event Jesus talked about in the Olivet Discourse. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven. Just what we saw at seal 6. And the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Exactly what we saw. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. That's exactly what we just saw at seal 6. Every free man, every slave, seeing him and mourning that he's coming, and he's coming with wrath. This is the day of the Lord. So when you open seal 7, it's as if seal 7 is oblivious to the fact that seal 6 just happened. Seal 6 takes place. Okay, sounds horrible. Then seal 7 opens. Have you noticed that the first 6 seals take 2 chapters? 2 chapters to open and explain. Seal 7, 14 chapters, takes up 70% of the book of Revelation. And during that long discourse, we get glimpses of society here and there. For instance, when the 2 witnesses die, we are told that the world is watching and sees their bodies laying dead in the streets of Jerusalem. So how did telecommunications get back up and running? I mean, the last time we saw civilization, everyone is begging for death, those that are still alive. And then they trade gifts because they're so happy that the 2 witnesses are dead. Well, how did they get from being in rocks and caves to suddenly, we're having a great time again? when Babylon is destroyed a little later on in Seal 7, we're told that the merchants, all of the merchants and the captains of the ships are so sad that they no longer have Babylon as a trading partner because they were doing such great business. So in other words, well, how did they come out of the caves and the rocks, and will they dust themselves off? Did Jesus kind of come, scare the heck out of everybody and go away? And they all just kind of said, wow, that was horrible, but let's start rebuilding. And then they all passed out T-shirts that said, I survived the day of the Lord. And they got shipping lanes back up and running and gift stores. And it doesn't make any sense to me. On top of that, right before the seventh bowl, Jesus says, behold, I come as a thief. That's day of the Lord verbiage. That's what Paul said, the day of the Lord comes as a thief. That's what Peter said, the day of the Lord comes as a thief. But Lord, Master, no offense, but you already came as a thief at the day of the Lord. Everybody saw you back at Seal 6. How can you, a few years later, say, I'm surprising them again? You already surprised them. Why didn't you say that before Seal 6? And finally, the thing that bothered me was the seventh bowl looks suspiciously like the sixth seal. There's a great earthquake. The mountains and islands are moved out of their way again. Once again, after John learns that Babylon has just been destroyed, he looks into heaven and sees a multitude standing there, just like he did in Seal 6. And heaven is celebrating that it's over, just like they did at Seal 6. What is going on? And I couldn't figure it out. One solution would have been, well, we normally see the timeline of the book of Revelation, and it looks like this, all in one general timeline. You have the first 5 seals open. Now, I kind of think they're already been open. I think they may have been open in the first century. I could be wrong on that. Let's don't even worry about that. If you want to stick them in end times events, that's fine. It's not going to affect what I'm going to show you. But there's the general timeline of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 7th seal is open, and it takes us to the end. And that's where the problem is, because the 6th seal really should have been the end, but it wasn't. Even though they're celebrating in heaven when it happens, they act like it's the end, but it's not, because the 7th seal is yet to come. 14 chapters of bad stuff still to come. Well, if you took the 7th seal and instead of extending it along that timeline, put it underneath the main timeline and lined it up so that the 7th bowl would correspond with the 6th seal, my problems go away. Then Jesus is saying, behold, I come as a thief before the 7th bowl and the 6th seal because they're the same event. But the problem, that makes my problems go away, but by what authority do I have of doing that? To tell people, the 7th seal gets opened before the 6th. Well, why do you say that? Well, because I had a problem with it coming afterwards, so I moved it. Yeah, that's gonna really fly. I mean, I have to have true biblical reason why you would do something like that. That isn't really going to be the solution. But I was beginning to think about that a little bit, but I couldn't get that to fit. And then there's a problem with the 144,000, and I said, I can't get it. I can't get it. Let me jump to the solution. I'm going to give you the solution, and you're going to go, what? And if you do that and turn off this video, I hope you will stay with me through this, because I'm going to give you the solution, and then we're going to go back into Scripture, and I'm going to show you that it's something we've missed. The clues were there. I'm surprised. How did we miss this? But I'm about to show you. Here we go. And I can already hear people, punching the off button. Yeah, let me get out of this. That guy's nuts. Because it's different. It's not what you've been told, but it's his truth. It's not my truth, it's his truth. There are 3 event lines in the book of Revelation. All 3 event lines move us to the day of the Lord. 3 different camera views, if you will, of this spectacular event that even Old Testament prophets talked about and warned about and looked forward to and dreaded. It's that big of a deal. Using 3 different event lines or 3 different points of view is a classic technique in literature. And I bet you if I had Dr. Michael Heiser's home phone number, I could call him and go, is showing a story in 3 different ways conducive to Jewish literature? I bet it is. I bet it is. Whether it is or isn't, that's exactly how the book of Revelation is written for us and why we have gotten it wrong. It is not one long continuum. If you will think of it maybe this way, seals 1 through 6, which take us to the day of the Lord, are a quick overview of end times. If the seals are open in the 1st century, then it's a quick overview of the entire church age. You don't like that idea, I'm guessing, that the seals are open in the 1st century. So let's put them back in the end times. The first 6 are a very quick overview, kind of like the way a contract is written. A quick overview of the important points, and then the next, on one page, the front page, and the next 30 pages are the fine print. That's what the 7th seal is. But it is comprised of 2 more event lines that take us from one event to another to the day of the Lord. And then it starts over and takes us one event to another to the day of the Lord. And you're going to see that if you stick with me. Let's jump ahead to the 7th bowl. The 7th bowl is actually the conclusion of the 3rd event line. Now, these event lines all share the same time and space. Maybe not exactly. Maybe one of the event lines is a little longer, a little shorter. I don't know how that works, but there's a different time, not a timeline, an event line. And the 7th bowl concludes the 3rd one. Remember, Jesus has just said, behold, I come as a thief. So he's telling us what's about to happen is the day of the Lord, even though it was already declared at seal 6. Then the 7th angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple of heaven from the throne saying, it is done. And there were, I want you to remember this. Stick this in the back of your head. And there were noises and thunderings and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake. That's the same great earthquake that began seal 6. And then we're told, then every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. This is exactly what happened at seal 6. And great hail fell from heaven upon men. The skies are opening up once again. In a moment, John's going to look into heaven. He'll see the multitude. And they're finally ready for the marriage supper of the Lamb. Just as he looked into heaven at seal 6 and saw an innumerable amount of people who had given their lives and placed their faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. Same thing. A celebration of victory, both at 7th bowl, celebration of victory at the 6th seal. Because we now have seen 2 timelines, 2 event lines. I don't want to use timelines because that's going to be even more confusing. 2 event lines. It would look something like this. The 3 event lines would line up maybe something like this. But there's another event line that we need to look at, and it's the trumpet event line. How we have missed this is almost shameful on our part, because an angel tells us exactly what is happening, but we won't believe him. Listen to what the 7th angel, or the angel who's announcing that the 7th trumpet is about to blow. Listen to what he says. The angel whom I saw standing on the sea and on the land raised up his hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that are in it, and the earth and the things that are in it, and the sea and the things that are in it, that there should be delay no longer. What part of that do we not understand? He is swearing that the delay is over. But in the days of the sounding of the 7th angel, when he is about to sound, the mystery of God would be finished, as he declared to his servants, the prophets. We see that and we go, yeah, but there's 10 more chapters left or so, that can't be the end. And scholars will come along and say, well, what's happening here is God is declaring the end, even though it's not the end. That is not what he just said. He said, I swear by him who made all things, no more delay. We better believe him. Watch what happens when the seventh trumpet blows. Then the seventh angel sounded, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Folks, do you see it? It's over. It's over because once again, we've reached the day of the Lord at the seventh trump. And the 24 elders who sat before God on their thrones fell on their faces and worshiped God, saying, we give you thanks, O Lord God Almighty, the one who is and was and who is to come, because you have taken your great power and reigned. It's over. The nations were angry, and your wrath has come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, and that you should reward your servants, the prophets and the saints, and those who fear your name, small and great, and should destroy those who destroy the earth. It's over. It's time to give the rewards out to those multitudes that we see standing in heaven at the sixth seal and the seventh bowl. It's over. It's done. And listen to this. And then the temple of God was opened in heaven, and the ark of his covenant was seen in the temple. Here we go. And there were lightnings, noises, thunderings, and earthquake, and great hail. It's exactly the verbiage used at the seventh bowl. That is a giant clue left by the Holy Spirit, pointing us to the seventh bowl, which said the exact same thing. All three of these events, the sixth seal, the seventh trumpet, the seventh bowl, have an amazing amount of similarities because they're the same event. 3 camera views of this incredible event. All 3 times, there's a celebration in heaven because it's over. It's done. All 3 times. Think of it this way. Each time it reaches the day of the Lord. First time, the sixth seal. If this were a movie, when the sixth seal comes to an end, we leave the men, every person on the planet hiding, cowering in rocks and rubble. If this were a movie, it would cut to black. And then a super would come up that says 7 years earlier, or 8 years, or 10 years, how many years. And we know when that happens in a movie, we're going back in time and we're going to watch some events lead back up to where we are to present day. That's what the book of Revelation is doing. Every time it hits that mile marker of the day of the Lord, it starts over and starts with the next event that begins the event line and moves to the day of the Lord. Day of the Lord comes, fade to black, 7 years earlier, or 8 years earlier, or 12 years earlier. We go back, and that event line begins working its way to the day of the Lord. When it finally hits the seventh bowl, that's the last we see of the day of the Lord. All 3 event lines have played out, even though they shared their time together, much of it at least. So when I saw that, and I looked at the seventh trumpet and went, that's another day of the Lord event. So when it says, and it concludes with, and there were lightnings, noises, thunderings, and earthquake, and great hail, just like we saw at the seventh bowl, because it's the same event. That concludes the second event line. We have one more event line to go, and it will share space with the other 2, but it runs on its own event schedule. So I said to myself, well, the next thing that shows up in the Bible will be the first event in the third event line. And here it is. Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. That's why we saw the Revelation 12 sign. It did not come early. It came right on schedule. It was the first event in the third event line, and probably the very first event of end times. That's why we saw it, because we didn't know there were 3 lines of action leading to the same catastrophic event known as the day of the Lord. One of the event lines begins with seal 1. The second event line begins with trumpet 1. The third event line begins with the Revelation 12 sign, which we've already seen. That event line is working. The others will kick in at their appointed time. What will come next, I do not know. Hopefully the rapture. Hopefully the rapture, right? This is why we saw it. He made the first end time event solely for us, solely for our day, so we would know. We're the only ones that are aware of it. He is showing us, you are in end times. When you see this event, one of the event lines has begun. The other two are coming. They will kick in on schedule at their appointed time. When I was, before I was a Christian, I went to a lot of plays. I'd still go to the theater if there were, decent, wholesome plays. Maybe there are some. But we would all be milling around in the lobby beforehand, and everybody knew the sign we were looking for. They clicked the lights on and off rapidly a couple of times, and that was the cue to take your seat, get ready, play's about to start. That's what the Revelation 12 sign was to us. He was telling us, you're in the end times. It's coming. Do we know what the next event is? We hope it's the rapture, and maybe it is. But we're in the end times. And the Revelation 12 sign did not come early or out of place. It came right where it belongs. It starts one of the event lines and leads then to the day of the Lord. This is the format of the Bible, of the book of Revelation. The Old Testament prophets spoke many times about this day, the day of the Lord. It deserves 3 views, and there's probably a lot more to it than I'm seeing right now. But I'm giving you the truth of the book of Revelation in terms of structure. This is how it's structured. This explains why it didn't make any sense where you would have the 6th seal and society and the earth are being ripped apart, and the next time we see them, everything's fine. Well, everything is fine because it's gone back 7, 8, 10, 12 years, whatever the time frame is. And it's taking us back up to the day of the Lord, where it'll be ripped apart again. And then we're going to go back a certain amount of years, start it over. If one of the coming events is going to be Satan thrown to earth, that's really the event that follows the Revelation 12 sign. Does it kind of feel like maybe that's already happened? I don't know. But he's going to spend a lot of time down here, and with 3 event lines, he will not have a clue what's coming next. Is it a seal? Is it a trumpet? Is it a bowl of wrath? Because they're going to all play over the same basic timeline. They're going to share the same space. People on earth are not going to know, oh, there's 3 event lines happening. No, it's going to seem like one giant, horrible, tragic series of events. But it's been placed there. God placed his military plan in view of everyone. And you can look at it, and even if you get how he structured it, you still don't know what's coming next. But here's the thing I want to leave you with. He's revealing information. If he gave a nobody like me some valuable information, and he did it because I prayed for it and searched for it, and I lined up with him in the sense that he is now willing to give information. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I was praying for it, and he was willing to give it. There's more information coming, and we've got to keep our eyes and ears open for it. We've already seen the first event of end times, the Revelation 12 sign. That was a friendly shot over our bow to wake up, put on the full armor of God, because the Spirit and the bride say, come.